Tear down that tent, or I'm calling the cops. That's what Margaret, the HOA president, screamed at me as I set up camp on my own lakeside property. What was supposed to be a quiet weekend escape spiraled into the most heated neighbor dispute I'd ever faced. Margaret was hell-bent on erasing my tent from existence, and she'd stop at nothing to make it happen. Little did she know, a VIP was about to visit our sleepy community of visitor who'd flip this feud upside down. Comment where you're reading from. You won't believe how this ends. It was a crisp Friday in late September when I drove to my lakeside retreat, craving a weekend of writing and solitude. The autumn leaves painted the landscape in fiery oranges and reds, mirrored perfectly on Crystal Lake's glassy surface. I parked my truck, grabbed my gear, and pitched a top-notch four-season tent, not some cheap setup, but one that could grace the pages of an outdoor magazine. As a freelance writer, I work from home, and sometimes I need to unplug and let nature reset me. Setting up camp is therapy, picking the perfect spot, laying the ground sheet, snapping poles into place. I chose a flat patch 50 feet from the water, shaded by a towering oak, with a deep green tint that blended into the pines. I brewed coffee on my camp stove, set up my laptop, and settled into my chair, ready for a productive weekend. My sister Laura and her husband Tom usually join me for fishing trips, but they were swamped with work. Tom's got a hush-hush government job, always traveling for some big project. I was looking forward to the solitude, just me and the lake's gentle ripples. That piece lasted 43 minutes, I know, because my writing app tracks my sessions. A golf cart's roar sliced through the silence, and I looked up to see a woman in her 50s charging toward me, her face set like she was on a mission. Dressed in a crisp polo, khakis, and sunglasses that screamed country club, she was clearly someone who took herself seriously. This wasn't a neighborly welcome. Margaret, though I didn't know her name yet, parked her spotless cart 10 feet from my tent and marched over like a general inspecting a war zone. Her lips pursed, her eyes raked over my setup with disgust. The air crackled with tension. "What do you think you're doing?" she snapped, her tone dripping with disdain. I set down my coffee, stood, and kept my voice friendly. "Just camping on my property for the weekend. Is there a problem?" Her response hit like a thunderbolt. "A problem? This violates our community standards," she bellowed, as if my tent were a crime scene. I'm a reasonable guy, so I asked her to cite the specific rules I was breaking. It seemed fair if I was in the wrong, I'd fix it. But Margaret dodged, unable to produce any bylaws, falling back on her title as HOA president and vague talk of aesthetics. "I've run this association for 10 years, she bragged, as if that gave her the right to rewrite property laws. "This eyesore isn't acceptable. Remove it now, or you'll regret it." I kept calm, asking which bylaw banned camping, where the rules were written, who could enforce them. Each question made her angrier, her answers more authoritarian. "I don't need to explain myself," she finally spat, storming back to her cart and speeding off. I knew this wasn't over. As a writer, I know documentation is everything. The second she left, I opened my laptop and dug into the HOA bylaws. What I found was gold. No rules against temporary camping on private property. In fact, the bylaws protected my right to use my land recreationally, as long as I didn't build anything permanent or harm the environment. I created a folder labeled Margaret Drama and filled it with screenshots of the bylaws, photos of my tidy tent, and notes on our clash, complete with timestamps and her exact words. I snapped pictures showing my campsite's minimal impact: no trash, no damage, just a neat setup. That evening, my phone pinged with an email from Margaret Thompson, HOA president. Subject: official warning, immediate compliance required. It called my tent an unsightly eyesore that threatened property values and demanded removal within 24 hours or formal enforcement action. I almost laughed at her audacity. I crafted a response, attaching the bylaws, photos, and a polite but firm defense of my rights, then hit send. Type, "Yes," if you've dealt with a power-hungry neighbor. Saturday morning was gorgeous, with mist rising off the lake and crisp air that made you glad to be alive. I polished my email to Margaret, ensuring every detail was airtight, and sent it with confidence. Around 10, I was riding when a sheriff's car rolled up, followed by Margaret's golf cart. Deputy Carter stepped out, looking like he'd seen this movie before. Margaret trailed him, practically giddy, expecting my arrest. Carter explained he'd gotten a trespassing complaint. I handed over my ID and deed, proving I owned the land. He reviewed them while Margaret fidgeted, her smirk fading as he confirmed everything was legit. But it's an eyesore, she protested. It hurts property values. Carter shut her down politely. Ma'am, if he owns the land and isn't breaking any laws, there's nothing I can do. He advised me to keep documenting, accepted a coffee, and left. Margaret lingered, fuming, clearly plotting her next move. That night, a neighbor texted me a screenshot from our community's private forum. Margaret had gone nuclear, posting a rant titled, "Urgent, Security and Property Value Threat." She painted me as a vagrant squatting on the lakefront, with photos of my tent shot to look menacing. Her post was a masterclass in fear-mongering. This unauthorized structure threatens our community's prestige. If we allow this, what's next? RVs. Shantytowns. Comments split predictably. Her allies cheered, but others questioned her. If it's his land, what's the issue? One asked. Margaret shot down dissent, doubling down on her authority. Reading it felt like a gut punch. Neighbors I'd waved to were now debating my character like I was a criminal. I started dismantling my tent, crushed by the social pressure. But standing by the lake, listening to the waves, I remembered why I bought this place. It was my sanctuary. I reassembled my tent, vowing to fight with facts. Sunday, Margaret announced an emergency meeting Monday at 7 p.m. to discuss community safety. Her post implied my tent was a threat to our way of life. Comment secrets if you think she's hiding something. Monday's meeting was packed, the community center buzzing with tension. Margaret had turned it into a courtroom, with poster-sized photos of my tent and a podium like she was prosecuting a felon. Dressed in a power suit, she launched into a theatrical speech, calling me a danger to property values and community standards. If we allow this, she warned, we'll have RVs and homeless camps next. Neighbors nodded, swept up in her fear-mongering. When she finished, I stood, connected my laptop to the projector, and presented the bylaws, photos, and facts showing my compliance. The room shifted as people saw the truth. Margaret grew frantic, and then she snapped. You don't get it, she shouted. Next week, a major government official is visiting. This could skyrocket our property values, attract investment, put us on the map. And this man's tent is ruining it. The room froze. Her secret was out. This was about her ambition, not my tent. Neighbors looked betrayed, realizing she'd manipulated them. The weekend was quiet, but I braced for Margaret's next move. Monday morning, sirens shattered the calm. A sheriff's car, fire truck, and hazmat van stormed my property. Deputy Carter approached, saying they'd gotten a 911 call about hazardous chemicals. The hazmat team tore through my campsite, testing everything from my stove fuel to my coffee. After 45 minutes, they found nothing. Margaret arrived, expecting triumph, but her story crumbled under Carter's questions. She'd lied, and now faced charges for a false report. Carter apologized, urging me to keep documenting. I called Laura, asking Tom to call me. When he did, I explained everything. His response floored me. That spot was chosen for a secret government meeting next week. It's perfect, private, secure, owned by someone we trust through family. Margaret's campaign had jeopardized the very event she'd pinned her dreams on, creating a security nightmare that might force a relocation. The irony was delicious. Tuesday, Margaret made her final play, setting up a garish welcome display at the community entrance with banners and a crowd, dressed like she was meeting the president. At 2 p.m., a government convoy approached. She beamed, ready for glory. But the cars rolled past her, straight to my campsite. A senior official stepped out, shook my hand, and said, "James, this spot is perfect. Thank you for keeping it discreet despite the chaos." Across the lake, Margaret's face collapsed as her crowd scattered, her banners flapping in defeat. She'd destroyed her own dream. Sometimes, the best way to beat a bully is to stay calm and document everything. Real people are wild, and this story proves it. Hit the bell for more.